stranger, my name is miizmi, and once a week I make videos discussing movies I find particularly interesting. And this week I want to discuss the infamous Batman and Robin, a movie which almost ended an entire franchise. Now, I'm fully aware that this movie is almost universally hated because of its over-the-top, nonsensical, campy nature. And it's so bad that those involved still apologize for its very existence to this day. But I have to confess that I unironically love this movie. Yes, I'm sure nostalgia plays a large factor in that, but I also think it's the fact that I'm not heavily invested in Batman as a franchise, or even superheroes and comics in general. So I view this through the lens of a casual watcher and can separate the darker, grittier version of Batman and this more garish version of him, but can still appreciate and enjoy both of them. Now, that's not to say that I think this version is more enjoyable by any means, or it's even something that I consider rewatching on a consistent basis. But now and then it is still really fun to just go back and see how ridiculous this entire movie was. So today I just wanted to have a quick discussion about the movie in general. So now that that's all said, let's go ahead and get started. The movie opens up with probably one of the most iconic scenes, showcasing close-ups of Batman and Robin ascending their costume with shots of their butts, even including an unnecessary pepper bounce for a booty jiggle. This movie was a lot more sexual than I remember as a child, which makes a lot of sense that it would completely fly over my head, but I still wasn't fully prepared for that when I was rewatching this, especially all the lines that Poison Ivy had.
My garden needs tending. Some lucky boy's about to hit the honeypot. I'll bring everything you see here, plus everything you don't. I'll help you grab your rocks. How about slippery when wet?
The leather-clad duo heads to the Natural History Museum where Dr. Freeze is in the middle of a diamond heist, and 4 minutes into the movie we get our first ice pun.
I'm afraid that my condition has left me cold to your pleas of mercy. You are not sending me to the cooler.
I tried counting how many times this actually happens throughout the movie, and I got about 31. Now keep in mind, this is all from Dr. Freeze himself, not including the other characters and their puns, so take that as you will. But there, a hockey fight-like game ensues, complete with randomly placed beam sound effects here and there, before Dr. Freeze delivers one of his most iconic lines.
What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age!
And escapes with a gigantic diamond in his ice tank rocket hybrid. However, Batman is able to sneak inside while Robin clings onto the rocket exterior as it blasts through the roof into the atmosphere. Inside, Dr. Freeze immobilizes Batman and leaves through an escape hatchet as Robin makes it inside and defrosts Batman. The two blow up the capsule, surfing through the air, and chase Dr. Freeze on foot. Robin hastily tries to take a leak, getting frozen instead, and Dr. Freeze taunts Batman as he makes his escape. At a science lab in Brazil, Dr. Pamela Isley is experimenting with giving plants venom so they are more resistant to human intervention, and sneaks into her boss's, Dr. Woodrow's lab. There, she witnesses him injecting her venom concoction into a serial killer, transforming him into a super soldier named Bane who breaks on his chains and destroys part of the lab, exposing Dr. Isley's hiding spot. Dr. Woodrow takes her aside and tells her to join him in the most disturbing part of the movie as he tries to force himself onto her, and Dr. Isley, enraged that he corrupted her research for his own means, threatens to expose him, so he pushes her into a rack of various toxins and throws snakes on her as she disintegrates into the earth. Back at the Batcave, Batman digs up old lab security footage of Dr. Freeze, who was once a renowned molecular scientist that was working to develop a cure for his terminally ill wife, who is presumed to now be dead. A lab accident altered his genes, making him unable to survive in normal temperatures, hence the need to steal diamonds to power his cryogenic suit. Unbeknownst to Batman, Dr. Freeze has been able to successfully cryogenically freeze his wife, and plans to steal one last large diamond to power his machine, which will freeze the entire city so that he can force them to pay for his continued research into a cure for his wife. Batman plans to trap Dr. Freeze by enticing him with a party, showing off winning diamonds. Dr. Woodrow successfully sold Bane, and while discussing details with the buyer, the earth splits to reveal a sexified Dr. Isley who has been chemically changed by toxins.
Laced my blood with aloe, my skin with chlorophyll.
I have to say, her whole sultry, sexy accent that she kept during the entire movie just I could not take seriously. And I mean, to be fair, as someone who's not attracted to women myself, I can't truly be the judge of whether or not this is deemed desirable, but I don't know, like her heavily put on accent and the glare that she would sometimes do just really gave me the giggles. Anyway, she kills Dr. Woodrow with a poisonous kiss and burns the lab down while going on a diatribe about Mother Nature, noticing that one of the lab bottles is inscribed with Wayne Enterprises label, and heads to Gotham City with Bane in tow. She dons away in her previous mousy appearance and forces her way past security to speak with Bruce Wayne, giving him a proposal that would end his enterprise's environmentally toxic practices, but will result in millions of deaths due to the lack of heat and food as collateral. Bruce rejects her extreme proposal, which causes her to rape the
The day of reckoning is coming. That's right. The same plants and flowers that saw you crawl from the primordial soup will reclaim this planet, and there will be no one to protect you.
And the reporter condescendingly reports that they have Batman and Robin to protect them. Bruce invites her to the rainforest ball to meet the duo herself, as they would be auctioning off diamonds to raise money for the Gotham Botanical Gardens. At the ball, rich white men creepily bid on women dressed as flowers in the name of charity, when a costumed gorilla climbs up onto a perch above the crowd and begins a sexy strip dance, revealing Poison Ivy in all her glory. She blows some pheromone dust on the crowd, making everyone enamored with her as she climbs onto the stage, grabbing a necklace and enticing more bids, as the winner will receive a night with her company. The crowd clamors to bid, with Batman and Robin joining in, fighting over her when Dr. Freeze breaks in. His minions fight with Batman and Robin as he swings onto the stage, resistant to Ivy's charms, and takes the necklace, driving off in his ice tank as Batman and Robin give chase on a massive city statue. Batman sacrifices his Batmobile, but is able to apprehend Dr. Freeze, who is then locked away at Arkham Asylum with a cold beam that keeps him confined to just his bed. Meanwhile, Ivy goes lair hunting with Bane, taking over a skater, cannibal, neon graffiti gang cult. I honestly have no idea how to describe them, and I don't really know what their purpose is, but she takes over their hideout and redecorates with her magic plants before visiting Dr. Freeze. This is the first time we see her seemingly able to manipulate plants, which really confused me because in my memory she was a very strong, powerful woman, and her being able to control vines was an integral part of her character. But on a rewatch, she actually seems to be pretty weak, all things considered, because she relies almost solely on Bane to get her work done, occasionally popping up to dustmen, but even then, her powers seem to be pretty insignificant. Because she has to constantly be blowing the pheromone dust on the same men multiple times to get it to work. So does it only effective for a couple minutes? That also doesn't truly make sense because the first time that Batman was ever exposed to that dust, he seemingly couldn't forget about her for days on end. And the dust itself seems to have a mind of its own because when she first used it on the crowd, it evenly dispersed and affected everyone there. However, later in the movie when she was dusting Commissioner Gordon, it only affected him. Even though there was a waft of it off to Batman, he wasn't fully affected and no one else in the area was either. So maybe she is able to control who it affects. But if that is the case, then why would she want it to go to Batman? Because she wasn't in costume, which leads him to later identify her and ruin her plans. Anyways, back to the story. Poison Ivy kills Dr. Freeze's guard and has Bane bring him out his suit so the three of them can break out, with plans to head to his hideout so he can recharge his suit and grab his wife. At said hideout, Batman and Robin finds his wife and realize Dr. Freeze has found a cure for the beginning stages of McGregor syndrome. So Poison Ivy suggests he retrieve the diamonds while she saves his wife. And even though his suit is running on low, how could he ever think that leaving the fate of his beloved wife in the hands of someone who's previously expressed interest in him and mere moments earlier expressed anger at finding out the fact that he has a wife to begin with is a good idea?
You never said anything about a wife.
At that point, you're just asking for trouble. Even worse, because he's easily able to take care of the policeman in the hideout, but doesn't think to double back and make sure his wife is okay after his suit is charged. But anyways, Batman and Robin smell Poison Ivy's pheromone dust and follow the trail down a drain. There they are met with the brutish Bane interchangeably fighting him and trying to resist Poison Ivy's dust. Robin seemingly is more effective as she speaks of him becoming his own entity rather than Batman's shadow. A sentiment Robin has expressed throughout the movie and has gotten into multiple arguments with Batman because he feels Batman doesn't trust him enough and treats him like a child rather than a partner. Although to be fair, basing off of his actions alone in this movie, Robin hasn't actually done anything to really install faith or confidence in Batman. I mean, from the very beginning of the movie, he was complaining about not having a car despite him having a fully functional bike.
I want a car. Chicks dig the car.
Lost the diamond while it was in his possession, and when he got it back, took after Dr. Freeze without at least handing the diamond to Batman, and in turn lost it to Freeze once again and was frozen in turn. On the other hand, Batman was kind of a jerk throughout the movie, at one point even manually overriding Robin's control and shutting his bike down, which honestly was probably a lot more dangerous than just letting him make the jump. So Robin did have a point to some extent. The conflict just wasn't written out the best, so it almost doesn't seem like it's justified. Ivy makes it back to her lair where Dr. Freeze has made himself at home and tells him that Batman and Robin pulled his wife's plug and she was unable to stop them, giving him her necklace as evidence and uses his grief and hatred to advantage. She encourages him to freeze all of the humanity so she can reintroduce a new era with removing plants. At the opening part of the observatory, Ivy does Commissioner Gordon to get access to the bat signal, and Bane takes it back to their lair so she can lure Robin to her. Once he comes to her, she tries to kill him with a kiss, but he has on a layer of rubber lips thanks to Batman's insight, so she shoves him to the ponds for her vine to drown him. As she runs off, Batman intercepts her, but she uses her vines once again to deal with him. She attempts to leave, but is interrupted once again by the entrance of Batgirl, and I honestly wouldn't have even mentioned her if it wasn't for the fact that she's the one that beats Poison Ivy, because her entire inclusion as a character was completely unnecessary in the storyline. She showed up earlier to visit her uncle Alfred, supposedly on break from her prestigious school, but it turns out she actually got kicked out for street racing, which she apparently did to save up enough money to take Alfred away from life of servitude. I say that her inclusion is completely unnecessary because she's only there to later reveal that Alfred is actually sick, but we really don't need her for that because from the beginning of the movie, Alfred has already been showing various signs of his declining health, including not opening the door when she first arrived, which catches Bruce's attention. So Bruce would have eventually just connected all the dots on his own without her intervention, and that actually confirmed later once Robin reveals this information to Bruce. He explains that he already knows.
Alfred, he'd never say anything, but I can tell.
Which means she's not an integral part of this movie, and if we had just cut her out, it would have helped trim down the movie a bit, because even for someone who likes it, this movie definitely started dragging around the halfway point. And speaking of unnecessary scenes, there's this one where Dr. Freeze made his minions sing along to Christmas songs for some reason, and then he gets hit on by this girl who's dressed very cutely, but extremely impractical for the code. But a strange decision in clothing aside, her character was really also unnecessary because she's only there to, like, I guess, make Dr. Freeze seem like a really desirable guy. But she never shows up again, and it is never clear what she actually was there for besides wanting to sit with him. So yeah, we could have really just trimmed that down, and I suppose the only real reason why it was relevant to begin with is because it leads to Dr. Freeze revealing his grand plans of freezing the entire city, but again, it's really not necessary because he could have just said that without her there. But anyways, Poison Ivy ends up getting eaten by her own plants, which, like I said earlier, is just really confusing because I could have sworn she was like really powerful and had complete control of her plants. But I will say her, along with the girl from Sky High, really made me think as a kid that all gingers just possess the magical abilities to control plants, and I was like so envious. And it probably didn't help the fact that I never really saw anyone with red hair in real life until about like high school. So to me, it like further confirmed that like crazy notion that gingers were able to control plants. So I'm like, okay, well that would make sense. It's very hard to catch a glimpse of them because they're so powerful, they're not going to want to be seen. So yeah, I was pretty dumb as a kid. Back to the story. At the observatory, Dr. Freeze breaks in, freezes the technicians on site, and takes over the telescope. He puts his machine in use and freezes the entire city while Bane sets up bombs throughout the area. The superhero trio arrive, with Dr. Freeze nowhere in sight, and set about rerouting the satellites to reflect enough sunlight onto the telescope to thaw the city in the 11-minute time span they have. As Robin and Batgirl climb out to defrost the panels, Dr. Freeze pops up, shoving them off, and begins fighting with Batman. Robin and Batgirl are able to swing themselves into a cave and are met with Bane, who chokes him against the wall. They work together to kick the tube that distributes the venom, causing him to deflate back to his original form, while Batman deactivates Dr. Freeze's suit and shoves him over the rail. In retaliation, Dr. Freeze sets off a bomb which destroys the telescope, but Batgirl is able to reroute the satellites to redirect the light directly at Gotham and successfully thaw the city. Batman approaches Dr. Freeze and reveals that Poison Ivy is actually the one that pulled his wife's plug, but they were able to save her in time, and while he's sent back to Arkham Asylum, a lab with his wife will be set up so he can continue his research. He then appeals to the doctor's side of Freeze and asks him to save a life, so Dr. Freeze gets the stage 1 cure which saves Alfred. Dr. Freeze arrives at Arkham with his suit, working again, and his cellmates with the deranged Ivy, promising to extract his revenge and make her life miserable. The movie ends with the trio of superheroes backlit and running in slow motion. So that was the movie, and like I said, this isn't a good movie by any stretch of the imagination. I still find it really enjoyable to rewatch even as an adult. I think the main reason why I don't think this is as awful as everyone else does is because if we're strictly looking at Batman's performance, there really wasn't anything bad or even good about it. If anything, his character was quite bland, but he didn't ever act out of character or do anything completely different and out of realm for Batman. In fact, all the superheroes in this film seem to really take a backstage and pale in comparison to the villains. Because I remember a lot of Dr. Face's lines, and even the scenes with Poison Ivy were really memorable, but nothing from the superheroes really sticks out in my mind. Batman was boring, Robin was a brat, and Batgirl was just there. Now, for the villains, I absolutely adore them, and I know a lot of people don't really like Arnold Schwarzenegger's acting in this movie, but I find his over-the-top cheesiness just so fun, and it really adds a little wackiness to this already bonkers movie, which I love. And acting aside, I actually really like the skin effect they have, and while I'm not particularly fond of glitter myself, when seeing it in close-up shots of Dr. Freeze, I just think it looks so gorgeous. And his fashion sense is just on point. I loved every single outfit he was in, from his really cool futuristic looking suit to the more bougie, swaggy looking loungewear. Like, it just all looks really great, and I really like it. And speaking of fashion, Poison Ivy definitely steals the show with her iconic Ivy bodysuit. Like, that one was just so gorgeous, and with her gloves too. They're just perfection together. Now, for her second outfit with the neon green bodysuit, it's not really my favorite, it's not really my cup of tea, but I do love her hairstyle and her cape. That one I thought was a really gorgeous piece. Now, we're not going to talk about her third outfit because I have to be honest, I hated everything from head to toe. Maybe not her hair was looking kind of cool, but it screamed a little Queen of Hearts for me, so I wasn't the biggest fan of that. But again, with all those into consideration, like, the villains were just so interesting. Like, I loved all of their backstories, and they just, I don't know, they just seemed so much more interesting than the superheroes. So in a way, I see this movie as more about following Dr. Freeze's and Poison Ivy's crazy antics. It just so happens to include Batman Robin rather than the other way around. So maybe that's why I don't really hate this movie. That, or I just have trash taste. But that's really all I have to say for this movie. So if you watched this all the way through, thank you so much. But with all that being said, I've been me, aka miizmi, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye!